My name is Linda Carter. I'm 62 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that love could overcome anything. I was wrong. Sometimes, love isn't enough when someone quietly rewrites your family's story behind your back. My son-in-law didn't scream at me or threaten me. He did something far worse. He made my own daughter believe I had stopped loving her. It took 6 long years for the truth to come out. Today, I'm telling my story, not for sympathy, but because I don't want another mother to lose her child the way I almost lost mine. If you're listening to my story today, thank you. I know there are thousands of stories online about family betrayal, but this one is mine. Every word I'm about to tell you really happened, and even now, remembering it still hurts. My name is Linda Carter. I live in a small town outside Columbus, Ohio. These days, my mornings are quiet. I wake up before sunrise, make myself a cup of coffee, and sit on the front porch watching birds gather around the old maple tree in my yard. People who drive by probably think I'm just another retired widow enjoying peaceful mornings. They have no idea how lonely this house once felt. My husband, Michael, passed away from a heart attack when he was only 48 years old. Our daughter, Emma, was just 8. The night he died, I remember sitting beside Emma's bed while she cried herself to sleep. I promised her something that night. I'll always be here for you. No matter what happens. At the time, I meant every word. I had no idea there would come a day when my own daughter would believe I had broken that promise. Raising Emma alone wasn't easy. I worked as a registered nurse at Riverside Hospital. My shifts were long, sometimes 12 hours, sometimes longer when another nurse called in sick. There were nights when my feet hurt so badly that I cried in the shower because I didn't want Emma to see me struggling. Money was always tight. I skipped buying new clothes for years. I drove the same old blue Honda until it had nearly 300,000 miles on it. Every extra dollar went toward Emma's future. When she wanted piano lessons, I found a second weekend job. When she dreamed about attending law school, I emptied my retirement savings without hesitation. People often asked me why I sacrificed so much. My answer was always the same. She's my daughter. Nothing else needed explaining. Emma grew into a remarkable young woman. She was intelligent, hardworking, and kind. Even after becoming a successful attorney in Chicago, she called me almost every evening. Sometimes we talked for 5 minutes. Sometimes for an hour. She told me about difficult clients, funny coworkers, and her dreams of starting her own law firm someday. Those phone calls became the happiest part of my day. Then, one autumn afternoon, everything changed. "Mom," she said excitedly over the phone, "there's someone I want you to meet." His name was Daniel Brooks. They had met at a charity fundraiser. According to Emma, he was thoughtful, successful, and funny. "He makes me feel safe," she told me. As a mother, hearing those words filled my heart with relief. A few weeks later, Daniel came to my house for Sunday dinner. He arrived carrying flowers and a homemade apple pie. Before I could even offer to take his coat, he smiled warmly. "Mrs. Carter," he said, "Emma has told me so much about you. Thank you for raising such an incredible woman." No mother could have asked for a better first impression. During dinner he listened carefully whenever I spoke. He laughed at my stories. He even helped wash dishes afterward without being asked. When he and Emma left that evening, I remember smiling to myself. Maybe, I thought, life was finally giving our family a little happiness after so many difficult years. 6 months later they were engaged. The wedding was beautiful. Emma looked radiant walking down the aisle. When the minister asked who was giving the bride away, I stood proudly and answered, "I am." Because after Michael died, both parents' responsibilities had become mine. During the reception Daniel hugged me. "I promise I'll always take care of Emma." I looked him straight in the eye. "I know you will." Those words would haunt me years later. After the honeymoon, Emma and Daniel bought a beautiful house in a quiet Chicago suburb. It wasn't cheap. I quietly gave them nearly $40,000 from the money Michael and I had saved over decades. They didn't ask. I offered. I wanted them to begin married life without financial stress. Emma cried when I handed her the check. "Mom, this is too much." I smiled. "It's not money. It's love." Daniel thanked me several times. He even insisted on calling me Mom instead of Linda. At first, I thought I'd gained the son I never had. For the first year, everything seemed perfect. They invited me for Thanksgiving. We celebrated birthdays together. Emma called nearly every evening just like before. Then the calls became every other day. Then once a week. Then silence. At first, I blamed work. She was a lawyer after all. Long hours weren't unusual. When I called, Daniel usually answered. "Emma's in the shower. She's still at the office. She fell asleep early." His explanations sounded reasonable. I never questioned them. One Sunday, I baked Emma's favorite cinnamon rolls. I packed them carefully and drove nearly 2 hours to surprise them. When I rang the doorbell, Daniel opened the door just enough to step outside. He smiled politely. "Oh, Mom, I wish you'd called first. I wanted to surprise Emma." His smile faded for only a second. "She's resting. Rough week. I'll only say hello." He hesitated. Then shook his head. "I really think she needs sleep." He accepted the container of cinnamon rolls and closed the door. I stood on the porch for several seconds. Something felt different. Not wrong. Just different. As I walked back to my car, I looked once toward the upstairs bedroom window. The curtains moved slightly. For just a second, I thought I saw someone standing there. Maybe it was Emma. Maybe not. I drove home telling myself not to overthink it. Families get busy. Newlyweds deserve space. I repeated those words all the way home. But deep inside, a quiet fear had already begun to grow. I wish I could tell you that I was imagining things. I wish I could say the strange feeling I had that afternoon disappeared the moment I got home. But it didn't. It stayed with me. For the first time in Emma's life, I felt like I was standing outside a door that used to be wide open. I tried not to let it bother me. After all, Emma was 32 years old now. She had a demanding career, a new marriage, and a life of her own. Every parent knows there comes a time when your children build families of their own. I reminded myself of that every day. Still, something didn't feel right. A week later, I called Emma after dinner. The phone rang 4 times before Daniel answered. "Hi, Mom." His voice sounded cheerful, almost rehearsed. "Hi, Daniel. Is Emma around?" "Oh, she's already asleep." I looked at the clock on my kitchen wall. It was only 7:45 p.m. "Already?" He laughed softly. "You know lawyers. She's exhausted. Could you tell her I called?" "Of course." The next morning I waited for Emma to return my call. She didn't. 2 days passed. Nothing. By Friday, I called again. Daniel answered once more. "This is becoming a habit," I joked. He chuckled. "I know. Bad timing. Can I speak with Emma?" "She's in a meeting. Tell her I miss her." "Will." Again. No return call. That was the first time I cried because of my daughter. Not because she had done anything cruel. Because I couldn't understand what had changed. For years she had called me almost every evening. Now it felt like I couldn't reach her at all. Christmas was only a month away. Emma had always loved Christmas. Even as an adult, she'd insist we bake sugar cookies together while old holiday songs played in the background. So I decided to surprise her. I spent nearly 2 weeks putting together a care package. Homemade cookies. Her favorite hot chocolate mix. A knitted scarf in her favorite blue color. Old family photos I had restored. And a handwritten letter telling her how proud I was of the woman she'd become. I shipped everything by priority mail. 3 days later, the tracking information said the package had been delivered. I smiled all day. Surely she'd call after opening it. She didn't. Christmas morning came. My phone stayed silent. No call. No text. Nothing. Around noon I finally gathered the courage to call. Daniel answered. Merry Christmas, Mom. Merry Christmas. Is Emma there? There was a short pause. We're visiting friends. Oh. I'll have her call you later. She never did. That afternoon, I sat alone at my dining room table. The turkey I had cooked for 3 people barely fit on the table. There were still 3 place settings. One for me. One for Michael. One for Emma. Michael's chair had been empty for 14 years. Now Emma's was empty too. I looked at both chairs for a long time before quietly putting the leftovers into the refrigerator. That was the loneliest Christmas of my life. Spring arrived. Emma's birthday was in April. Every year since she was born, I had baked the same chocolate cake with raspberry filling. This year would be no different. I baked it anyway. Even though I knew she probably wouldn't come. As I was cleaning the kitchen, my neighbor, Carol, knocked on the door. She was holding her phone. Linda. I wasn't sure if I should tell you. What is it? She turned the screen toward me. It was a picture from social media. Emma and Daniel were smiling at a birthday party. There were balloons. Friends. Cake. Candles. Everyone looked happy. Except. I hadn't been invited. I forced a smile. Looks like they had fun. Carol looked uncomfortable. I just assumed you were there. So did I. After Carol left, I stared at that picture for nearly an hour. Not because I was angry. Because I couldn't understand. Emma had never celebrated a birthday without me. Not once. Not in 32 years. Something had happened. I just didn't know what. A few days later, I finally reached Emma herself. When I heard her voice, relief washed over me. Emma. Hi, Mom. Her tone sounded distant. Not cold. Just. Different. I've missed you. I've been really busy. I understand. There was an awkward silence. So. I sent you a birthday card. I never got one. I frowned. I mailed it 2 weeks ago. Maybe it got lost. I also sent Christmas gifts. I didn't receive anything. I felt my stomach tighten. Really? No. She sounded almost confused. I thought maybe, you forgot. Forgot? I had never forgotten a birthday in her life. Not once. Before I could ask another question, Daniel's voice came faintly through the phone. Honey, we're leaving. Emma sighed. I have to go. Emma. Love you. The words sounded rushed. Then the line went dead. I sat there staring at my phone. She hadn't received my cards. She hadn't received my gifts. Or. She believed she hadn't. The following month I decided to visit unexpectedly again. This time, I wasn't leaving without seeing my daughter. When I arrived, Daniel opened the door. His smile disappeared the moment he saw me. Mom. I'd like to see Emma. She's working. I'll wait. Today's not a good day. I drove 2 hours. He stepped outside and quietly closed the front door behind him. That small action hurt more than I can explain. It felt like he was separating me from my own child. Linda. It was the first time he'd called me by my first name. I think Emma needs some space. Space? You're calling a lot. I stared at him. I call once every week. She's trying to focus on her marriage. I've never interfered with your marriage. He folded his arms. Sometimes parents don't realize they're still holding on. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. I raised that girl alone. I know. I sacrificed everything for her. I'm not saying you didn't. Then why can't I see my daughter? Daniel looked away. I think it's healthier if you don't stop by without calling. There it was. A polite sentence. Spoken with a calm voice. Yet it felt like a wall had just been built between me and Emma. I left without arguing. But this time, I cried the entire drive home. That night I opened an old wooden box where I kept family photographs. There were hundreds of pictures. Emma on her first bicycle. Emma graduating high school. Emma hugging me after law school. Emma dancing with me at her wedding. I held one photograph close to my chest. It had been taken on Mother's Day years earlier. On the back, Emma had written, "No matter where life takes me, you'll always be my best friend." I read those words over and over until tears blurred the ink. What I didn't know, what I couldn't possibly know, was that while I was crying alone in my quiet little house, someone inside my daughter's home was making sure every letter, every gift, and every attempt I made to reach her would never reach her at all. And the worst betrayal hadn't even begun. There comes a moment in every mother's life when she realizes something is terribly wrong, even if she can't explain why. For me, that moment arrived on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. I was cleaning the hallway closet when I found an old cardboard box filled with Emma's childhood drawings. One picture caught my attention. She couldn't have been more than 6 years old when she drew it. It showed a little girl holding her mother's hand beneath a bright yellow sun. Above the drawing, in crooked letters, she had written, "Me and Mommy. Best friends forever." I smiled through my tears. Then I asked myself the same question I had been asking for nearly 2 years. What happened to us? I wasn't angry anymore. I was simply heartbroken. Every morning, I checked my phone, hoping to see Emma's name on the screen. Every evening, I went to bed wondering if she had thought about me even once that day. Sometimes I'd pick up the phone to call her, then put it back down. I didn't want to become the overbearing mother Daniel seemed to think I was. So instead, I wrote letters. Every Sunday afternoon, I'd sit at my kitchen table with a cup of tea and write to my daughter. I told her about the flowers blooming in the backyard. I told her about the stray cat that had started sleeping on my porch. I told her how much I missed hearing her laugh. I never complained. I never blamed anyone. Every letter ended the same way. "I love you, sweetheart. No matter how much time passes, that will never change." I mailed every single one. Weeks passed. Months passed. Not one reply came back. Still, I kept writing. Because mothers don't stop loving their children simply because they stop answering the phone. About 3 years after Emma married Daniel, my health began to change. It started with exhaustion. Then dizzy spells. One afternoon, while grocery shopping, I nearly fainted in the checkout line. My doctor ordered several tests. The diagnosis wasn't life-threatening, but it wasn't simple either. High blood pressure. Heart problems caused by years of stress. "Linda," my doctor said gently, "you need to slow down." I laughed. Slow down for who? The truth was, I lived alone. There was no one waiting for me at home. No husband. No children. Just silence. I didn't tell Emma about my health. Not because I wanted to hide it. Because I didn't want her to feel guilty. If she was happy, that was enough for me. Or at least, that's what I kept telling myself. One Saturday afternoon, I drove past the little park where Emma used to play as a child. The old swings were still there. The wooden bench where Michael and I used to sit was still standing. Everything looked exactly the same. Except us. As I sat there remembering happier days, I heard someone call my name. Linda. I turned around. It was Susan. Emma's college roommate. We hugged warmly. It's been years, she said. It really has. She smiled. I saw Emma a few months ago. You did? At a charity gala in Chicago. My heart lifted. How is she? Susan hesitated. She looked happy. I smiled. I'm glad. Then Susan frowned slightly. She mentioned she hadn't heard from you in a long time. I blinked. What? Susan looked confused. She said you stopped calling after she got married. For a second. I couldn't breathe. I stopped calling? Susan nodded. I figured maybe you two had worked things out. Worked things out? I had spent years calling. Sending cards. Mailing gifts. Writing letters. How could Emma believe I'd simply disappeared? I forced another smile. There must be some misunderstanding. Susan noticed the tears forming in my eyes. Linda, is everything okay? I wanted to tell her everything. Instead, I simply said, I hope someday it will be. That evening, I drove home with one thought repeating over and over in my mind. Emma truly believed I had abandoned her. Not ignored her. Not forgotten her birthday. Abandoned her. Someone had convinced my daughter that I no longer cared. But who? I already knew the answer. I just didn't have proof. A few weeks later, I decided to send Emma something impossible to ignore. Not a package. Not flowers. Not another letter. I mailed her a photo album. Inside were pictures from every year of her life. Her first birthday. Her first day of school. Graduation. Christmas mornings. Family vacations. Wedding photos. On the last page, I wrote only one sentence. No matter what you've been told. I have loved you every single day of your life. I mailed it with tracking. 3 days later. The delivery status read. Delivered. For the first time in months. I allowed myself to hope. Maybe she'd finally call. Maybe she'd realize something was wrong. 1 week passed. Nothing. 2 weeks. Nothing. Then. The package appeared on my front porch. It had been returned. There was no explanation. No note. Just my own handwriting staring back at me. I carried it inside and placed it gently on the kitchen table. I couldn't bring myself to open it. It felt as though my daughter had returned every memory we'd ever shared. That night. For the first time since Michael died. I broke down completely. I sat on the kitchen floor holding that unopened photo album and cried until sunrise. Meanwhile. 200 miles away. Daniel stood alone in his garage. He opened a large plastic storage bin. Inside were dozens of unopened envelopes, birthday cards, Christmas cards, Mother's Day letters, small gifts. Every package Linda had ever mailed. He picked up the photo album. Without opening it. He shoved it into the bin and closed the lid. Then he carried the bin to the darkest corner of the garage. Hidden behind old boxes and gardening tools. Where he believed no one would ever find it. But secrets have a strange way of surviving. And somewhere inside that forgotten garage, the truth was waiting patiently. It wouldn't stay buried forever. When you've lived long enough, you learn that the truth has a way of waiting. It doesn't rush. It doesn't force its way into the light. It waits patiently until someone is finally ready to see it. I just didn't know that day was coming. At 60 years old, my world had become painfully small. Most mornings followed the same routine. I'd water the flowers Michael planted years ago. Feed the birds that gathered in my backyard. Then I'd make coffee and sit in the same rocking chair by the front window. From there, I watched families come and go. Children riding bicycles. Parents walking hand in hand. Grandparents holding little hands as they crossed the street. Sometimes I smiled. Sometimes I wondered if I'd ever know what it felt like to hold my own grandchild. Emma had never told me whether she and Daniel planned to have children. Maybe they already had. Maybe I was already a grandmother and didn't even know it. That thought hurt more than I could describe. I wasn't angry. I simply felt forgotten. One afternoon my phone rang. The number was unfamiliar. Hello? Is this Linda Carter? Yes. My name is Rebecca. I'm calling from St. Matthew's Community Center. Oh, hello. We're organizing volunteers to help mentor children who have lost parents. One of our volunteers recommended you. For me? She said you spent your career caring for people and raised a wonderful daughter by yourself. For the first time in months. Someone believed I still had something valuable to offer. I accepted immediately. Helping those children gave me purpose again. Every Wednesday afternoon I read books, helped with homework, and listened to stories about their dreams. One little girl named Sophie reminded me so much of Emma that I often had to blink away tears. One day she looked at me and asked, "Miss Linda, are you a grandma?" I smiled softly. "I hope I will be someday." She tilted her head. "Then where are your grandchildren?" I couldn't answer. Instead, I hugged her gently. Some questions don't have simple answers. Meanwhile, 200 miles away in Chicago. Emma's marriage wasn't the happy life I had imagined. Of course, I didn't know that then. I would only learn the truth much later. Daniel had changed. The charming, thoughtful man I met years earlier had become controlling. He decided where they went, who they visited, which friends Emma spent time with. If someone invited her to lunch, Daniel always had a reason she shouldn't go. If they cared about you, he'd say, they'd understand you're busy. Slowly, Emma's world became smaller too. She didn't notice it happening. Manipulation rarely feels like control in the beginning. It feels like protection. One Friday evening Emma was cleaning the kitchen when she casually asked, "Daniel, have you heard from Mom lately?" He didn't even look up from his laptop. "No. I haven't either." He shrugged. "Maybe she's enjoying retirement." Emma frowned. "I still think it's strange." "What is?" "She used to call all the time." Daniel closed his laptop. "Emma." "What?" "You've told me yourself that your mom had trouble letting go." "She loved me." "I know. She sacrificed everything for me." "I'm not denying that." "Then why would she suddenly disappear?" Daniel walked over and placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. "People change." Emma nodded slowly. "I guess." That single sentence ended the conversation. Daniel smiled to himself. Another question answered. Another doubt buried. Back in Ohio, life continued quietly. Then something unexpected happened. My mailbox contained a small white envelope with no return address. Inside was a handwritten note. "Sometimes people don't stop loving us. Sometimes we're simply prevented from seeing it. Don't give up." There was no signature. No explanation. I read those words at least 20 times. Who sent it? How did they know? Was it a mistake? Or had someone seen something they couldn't ignore? For the first time in years, hope returned. Just a little. A month later, I celebrated my 62nd birthday. Or at least, I tried to. I baked myself a small vanilla cake. Lit one candle. Made one wish. My wish, I whispered aloud, is to see my daughter again. Before blowing out the candle, I glanced toward the front door. Some foolish part of me still believed Emma might surprise me. She didn't. That evening I placed the leftover cake in the refrigerator. The next morning there was a knock at the door. Standing outside was my neighbor Carol. She was holding a bouquet of yellow roses. "I didn't want you spending your birthday alone." I hugged her tightly. "You always know when I need someone." She smiled sadly. "You deserve better than this, Linda." I didn't answer. Because deep down, I still believed my daughter loved me. She just didn't know I was waiting. Several weeks later, something happened that Daniel never expected. His company announced it was moving offices. Employees were asked to clean out old storage lockers and personal items before the move. Daniel decided to do the same at home. He spent an entire Saturday cleaning the garage. Old paint cans. Broken furniture. Boxes filled with forgotten belongings. Then, Emma walked into the garage carrying 2 cups of coffee. "I thought you could use a break." Daniel smiled. "Thanks. I'm going to sort through those old bins while you're outside." His smile disappeared. "No." Emma laughed. "Why not? They're full of old financial records. I organize paperwork for a living." I said I'll do it. His voice was sharper than usual. Emma stared at him. It was unlike Daniel to raise his voice. "Okay." She quietly walked back into the house. But for the first time in years, a tiny seed of doubt had been planted. Why was he so protective of one old plastic storage bin? She couldn't stop thinking about it. Neither could Daniel. That night, long after Emma had fallen asleep, he quietly walked into the garage. He stared at the gray storage bin hidden beneath old blankets. Inside it were 6 years of unopened birthday cards, Christmas presents, letters, photographs, and one photo album with a simple handwritten message. "No matter what you've been told, I have loved you every single day of your life." Daniel closed the lid quickly. He believed his secret was still safe. But he didn't realize something important. For the first time, Emma had noticed his fear. And once doubt enters a marriage, the truth isn't usually far behind. If there's one thing I've learned in 62 years of life, it's this. The truth doesn't stay buried forever. Sometimes it sleeps quietly beneath years of lies. But one day, someone accidentally uncovers it. I had no idea that while I was living my quiet life in Ohio, my daughter's world was about to change forever. It happened on an ordinary Saturday morning. Daniel had left early to meet a client. Before leaving, he kissed Emma on the forehead. "I'll be home around 4. "Drive safely," she replied. As soon as he pulled out of the driveway, Emma decided to continue cleaning the garage. She had been thinking about that gray storage bin ever since Daniel had reacted so strangely a few weeks earlier. It wasn't like him. Daniel was always calm. Always composed. So why had one plastic container made him so nervous? She pushed aside a stack of old moving boxes. Then another. Finally, she found it. The gray storage bin. It was heavier than she expected. She lifted the lid. For a moment, she simply stared. Inside were dozens of unopened envelopes. Each one had the same familiar handwriting. Her mother's. Emma frowned. No. Her hands began to shake. She picked up the first envelope. "Happy birthday, my sweet Emma." Postmarked. 5 years earlier. Still sealed. She grabbed another. "Merry Christmas, honey." Unopened. Then another. "Mother's Day. Thanksgiving. Anniversary cards. Birthday cards. Letters. Packages. Every one of them untouched. Her breathing became faster. This can't be real. She opened the oldest letter. Inside was a simple handwritten note. Dear Emma. I know you've been busy lately, but I just wanted you to know I'm thinking about you every single day. I made your favorite pumpkin pie today and smiled remembering how you used to sneak extra whipped cream when you thought I wasn't looking. Whenever you have time, I'd love to hear your voice. Love always, Mom. Tears rolled down Emma's cheeks. She opened another. Then another. Then another. Every letter was filled with love. Not anger. Not guilt. Not accusations. Only love. Only hope. Only a mother waiting for her daughter. Then she found the photo album. She slowly opened it. The first page showed a tiny baby wrapped in a pink blanket. The next page. Her first birthday. Kindergarten. Dance recitals. Graduation. Law school. Wedding day. On the final page. Her mother's handwriting. No matter what you've been told. I have loved you every single day of your life. Emma collapsed onto the garage floor. For nearly an hour she cried harder than she had since her father died. Every memory she believed about the past 6 years suddenly shattered. Mom hadn't abandoned me. She'd been trying to reach me all along. Then. Who stopped her? Her eyes slowly turned toward the house. Then toward the driveway. Only one person had access to every package that arrived. Only one person had always answered the phone. Only one person had insisted her mother needed space. Daniel. Suddenly, dozens of forgotten conversations replayed in her mind. Your mom probably forgot. She's busy with retirement. She worries too much. Let's skip visiting this weekend. I'll tell her you called. He never had. Emma wiped away her tears and looked deeper into the storage bin. At the bottom was a small cardboard box. Inside were flash drives. Printed emails. Phone bills. She picked up one phone statement. It showed over 200 missed calls from her mother over several years. 200. She remembered receiving almost none of them. Then she found printed copies of emails. Emails she'd never seen. Her hands trembled as she whispered. How? One email read. Emma, I know you're busy. I just wanted to wish you luck in court tomorrow. I know you'll do amazing. I love you. Another. Sweetheart, I heard there's a snowstorm in Chicago. Please stay safe. Another. Happy anniversary to you and Daniel. I hope your day is filled with happiness. Every email had been sent. None had reached her inbox. Emma finally understood. Someone had deleted them. She could barely breathe. The man she trusted most had stolen 6 years of her relationship with her mother. She looked around the garage as though the walls themselves had betrayed her. Then she noticed something else. An old security camera box. It had been installed years earlier after a break-in. Daniel had always handled the recordings. Emma suddenly remembered. The camera also covered the front porch. The place where packages were delivered. Without wasting another second, she ran inside. She opened the cloud storage account connected to the cameras. Months of recordings had been erased. But one folder remained. Daniel had forgotten to delete it. She clicked. The video showed the mail carrier placing a package on the porch. Minutes later, Daniel walked outside. He looked around. Picked up the package. Read the return address. Her mother's name. Instead of bringing it inside, he carried it directly to the garage. Emma watched in disbelief. Then another recording. Christmas. Another package. Straight to the garage. Birthday. Another package. Garage. Again. And again. And again. There was no misunderstanding anymore. No confusion. No excuse. Only betrayal. Emma closed the laptop. She looked at the wedding photo hanging on the wall. For years she believed Daniel had protected her. Now she realized. He had isolated her. Her marriage had been built on lies. She picked up her phone. Her thumb hovered over one name. Mom. She stared at it for several seconds. Would Linda answer? After everything. Did she even deserve forgiveness? With tears streaming down her face, Emma pressed the call button. 200 miles away. I was watering flowers in my backyard when my phone rang. I looked at the screen. For a moment, I thought my eyes were playing tricks on me. The screen read, Emma calling. My hands began to shake. I whispered to myself, please, don't let this be another dream. Then, I answered. The phone rang only once before I answered. Hello? For a few seconds. Neither of us spoke. Then I heard something I hadn't heard in 6 years. My daughter crying. Not quietly. Not politely. She was sobbing so hard she couldn't even form a sentence. My heart dropped. Emma? More crying. Sweetheart, what's wrong? Are you okay? Finally, through broken breaths, she whispered. Mom. I'm so sorry. I closed my eyes. I had imagined this moment thousands of times. I thought I'd be angry. I thought I'd ask why she'd abandoned me. Instead, the only thing I felt was relief. You're safe, I whispered. That's all that matters. She cried even harder. No. Mom. I was wrong. I know. I found everything. For a moment I didn't understand. What do you mean? The letters. The birthday cards. The Christmas gifts. The photo album. They were all in Daniel's garage. My knees became weak. I slowly sat down on the porch steps. So. You really did write to me. Every week. You never stopped calling. Never. You never forgot my birthdays. Not once. Emma covered the phone as another wave of tears overwhelmed her. I believed. She couldn't finish. I know what you believed. I thought you gave up on me. I never could. I thought. I know. No, Mom. You don't understand. I blamed you. I told people you stopped caring. Every word pierced my heart. Yet strangely, the pain I'd carried for 6 years began to disappear. Because finally, she knew the truth. That evening, Emma drove to Ohio. She didn't tell Daniel where she was going. She simply packed a small bag, got into her car, and drove through the night. Around 2 in the morning, there was a knock on my front door. I already knew who it was. When I opened the door, there stood my little girl. She wasn't 8 years old anymore. She wasn't wearing pigtails or carrying a school backpack. She was a successful attorney in her 30s. But the tears in her eyes were the same tears I'd wiped away after her father died. For several seconds, neither of us moved. Then Emma whispered, I'm so sorry, Mom. She collapsed into my arms. I held her exactly the way I had held her when she was a little girl frightened by thunderstorms. Neither of us spoke. Words weren't enough. For nearly 10 minutes, we simply cried together. Years of pain. Years of misunderstanding. Years stolen by lies. All poured out in silence. Finally Emma looked up. I don't deserve your forgiveness. I gently held her face. Maybe not. Fresh tears rolled down her cheeks. But you're still my daughter. Those 6 words broke whatever guilt remained inside her. She hugged me tighter than ever before. The next morning we sat at the kitchen table. The same table where I'd written hundreds of unanswered letters. Emma placed every one of those letters between us. "I'm going to read every single one." She did. One by one. Some made her smile. Some made her laugh. Most made her cry. When she reached the photo album, she stopped on the last page. "No matter what you've been told, I have loved you every single day of your life." She looked at me. "You really never stopped." I smiled through my tears. A mother's love doesn't disappear because someone tells her child a lie. 2 days later, Daniel came looking for her. He knocked on my front door. I opened it. He looked nervous. "Linda." I didn't invite him inside. "Emma's here." "I know. I'd like to speak with her." Before I could answer, Emma walked into the hallway. Her face was calm. Not angry. Not emotional. Just calm. "I'll talk to him." She stepped onto the porch and quietly closed the front door behind her. I couldn't hear everything they said. But later, Emma told me exactly how it happened. She asked only one question. "Why?" Daniel looked at the ground. "I loved you." "No. I did. You controlled me." "I was afraid." "Afraid of what?" "Your mother." Emma stared at him. "My mother?" "You listened to her." "Because she's my mother. I wanted you to depend on me. So you erased her." Daniel finally admitted everything. He intercepted letters. Deleted emails. Blocked phone numbers. Lied about messages. Destroyed family photographs. Even convinced relatives that Linda no longer wanted contact. 6 years. 6 years of carefully planned manipulation. When he finished speaking, Emma quietly removed her wedding ring. She placed it in his hand. "My mother spent 32 years teaching me what love looks like." She looked him straight in the eye. "You spent 6 years teaching me what control looks like." Then she walked away. Without looking back. The divorce was finalized several months later. Daniel didn't contest it. There was too much evidence. Too many emails. Too many recordings. Too many unopened letters. He couldn't explain any of it. He lost far more than a marriage. He lost the trust of everyone who knew the truth. As for Emma and me, healing wasn't instant. You don't erase 6 years of pain overnight. Some conversations were difficult. Some memories still hurt. But every Sunday, Emma came home. Just like she used to. We baked cinnamon rolls together. We laughed over old family photographs. Sometimes we'd sit on the porch doing absolutely nothing. Those ordinary moments became extraordinary. Because we almost lost them forever. A year later, Emma surprised me. She handed me a small wrapped box. Inside was a silver key. "What is this?" I asked. She smiled. "The key to the guest house behind my new home." I looked at her, confused. "I want you close." "Emma." I spent 6 years believing I didn't have a mother. She reached across the table and held my hand. "I'm not wasting another single day." Months later, she and I started a small nonprofit called Letters of Love. We helped reconnect elderly parents with estranged family members by offering mediation, counseling, and community support. Every time a mother reunited with her child, I silently thanked God that my own story hadn't ended in loneliness. Today, if you're listening to my story, I want to leave you with one thought. If someone you love suddenly grows distant, don't assume they stopped caring. Sometimes, the silence between two people isn't empty. Sometimes, someone else put it there. My name is Linda Carter. I'm 62 years old. And after 6 years of believing I'd lost my daughter forever, I finally got my little girl back.